Hello and welcome to another episode of Yell Fire, Conversations to Combat the Lie of White Supremacy. I'm your host, Craig Pelkey Landis, random white dude, provocateur, maybe? I don't know. Random white dude. So today, my guest is Dr. Jade Singleton. I'm super excited to have her on the show, on the podcast. Dr. Singleton is a distinguished advisor in strategic cultural transformation and education, the founder of Sarah Jane Academy and Johnson Squared Consulting. I got to know her through her work co-founding the Iconi Collective, a pioneering startup dedicated to enhancing work wellness for Black women professionals. And we're going to dig into some of that today. Dr. Singleton has consulted for NASA and spent over a decade working with leading investment firms, including Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. She is the creator and director of the documentary 92, The Silent Revolt No One Saw Coming, and author of an upcoming book. She's a really excellent writer. I'm jealous about that. I mentioned my jealousy of her writing several times in the interview. But she's the author of upcoming book, The Stoic Era: Black Women, Power, and the Quiet Rebellion Against Empire. So if you sense a theme, you are paying attention. So yes, 92 and the Stoic era are all about, well, 92 is a reference to the 92% of Black women who voted in favor of democracy, in favor of, yeah, in all of our interests, basically, in this past election in the U.S. And prior to that, it's the cohort of people who, have uh, tend to vote in everyone's best interest, not just for the oligarchy, not just, well, certainly not for white supremacy. So anyway, 92 is all about how kind of Black women were looking at what's happening in the U.S. as the results woke up in November of 2024, and said, "Wow, uh, this is insane," and decided, found kind of collectively, discovered that they were all uh, looking for different patterns of being and responding to the world, and so saying, "Hey, you know." Y'all broke it, y'all bought it kind of thing. And like taking a step uh, back from what it was like to taking a step back from, how do I phrase this? Taking a step back from how uh, from ownership of the mess that others have created, and finding new ways to engage in the world and engage with each other. So anyway, that's what 92 is about. That's what the Stoic era is about. And so we're going to talk about all of that stuff. So again, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me here. Thanks for joining the conversation I'm going to have with Dr. Singleton. Please like and subscribe, share, and yeah, do subscribe and if you're watching this on YouTube, click the little bell so you get notifications when new episodes come, all that stuff to support the work here at Yellfire. Thanks a lot. Well, Jade Singleton, welcome to Yellfire. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So to start off, just tell us a little bit about your background, about your work, about where you've been and what you're doing now, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's whenever anyone asks me that, I always hesitate because I think my background is so broad and gray in a sense.
Huh.
But I spent a lot of time early in my career in investment banking, working in asset management, then moved into, but always felt myself getting kind of pulled into more people related and people focused roles.
Mhm.
And so spent a lot of time or a good deal of time at NASA as a senior advisor,
Wow.
working with missions teams there and their senior leadership team, just on things like inclusion and team performance, health, and those types of things.
Mhm.
Started my own consulting company where I kind of expanded some of that work out. But most recently, what I've been most focused on is a documentary that I've is really near and dear to my heart, which is around Black women and the relationship Black women have with labor in America, right? And how I
Mhm.
see that evolving since the 2024 election. And as you know, Craig, from your great edits on my recent book that I'm looking to get out, also focusing on what we've called the Stoic era. So kind of
Yeah.
dovetailing and documenting what's taking place with Black women as it relates to work in this
Yeah.
point in time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do want to dig into both of those. So the documentary you worked on and is called the 92.
Yeah.
It's just called 92. Um, yeah, I had the pleasure of taking a look at that, and it's really super powerful. Tell me how that came about. How this specific project came about, and how one becomes a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah, well, I wish I knew the answer to that because I definitely didn't follow a traditional path. I had never done a documentary before, but I have always been obsessed with documentaries, mostly like war documentaries,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, just I think I've watched pretty much all that I could, and biography type of documentary features. And so, um, I think noticing what was happening within the environment and how Black women were changing the way that we thought about work, putting yourself out there, essentially martyring yourself, not being able to reap any of the rewards of your hard labor. Those were all themes that were coming up in conversations around the country and certainly within my group of women. And so I knew that if it wasn't documented, it would kind of just dissipate as if it never happened. And I truly thought that this was a movement, and now I know that this is a movement. So it was a I felt a pull because I thought that there was a vacuum um, that would, form if we didn't tell our own story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so talk to me a little bit about the title 92. I believe that is about the 92% of Black women who vote
Yeah.
in basically everyone's best interest.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that accurate?
That's
Okay.
it. Yep. And the entire title is 92, The Silent Revolt No One Saw Coming.
Mhm.
Because this type of change, right, where we're focused on, taking back your autonomy, focusing on self and community is not the typical revolt, but it is in a sense. It's a
Mhm.
very different way of looking at the world and experiencing the world as a Black woman. And you're absolutely right that 92%, meaning 92% voting for, democracy and democratic values.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so how can i- is the movie out now? How can people watch it? Are you doing screenings? Are you offering it for that kind of thing? How does that work?
Yeah, so right now we are doing what's called pre-screening. So we're doing, screenings to, groups that are invited.
Hmm.
And, that's right before festivals hit. So we've submitted to some festivals to see what we're able to do. I definitely see it as evolving, right? I think that we have a really strong premise. Audiences have responded very well to this from a grassroots perspective. We just did a screening at the Martin Luther King Memorial Library in DC.
Wow.
That was really exciting. And we'll be doing another screening at the Commonwealth Club of World Affairs in San Francisco for their club members. And so, all the way around, just looking at those audiences, seeing how they feel. And we're moving, along with that because we want it to be reflective.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so talk to me about the connection between 92 and then the Stoic era. Did the Stoic era come as a result of your conversations for the documentary, or was that happening like before, or like how did that evolve?
So it was I started the Stoic era about a year before the documentary. I
Hmm.
just never had the I guess as much of an urgency to finish it. It's kind of like sitting in this nebulous type of place with none of the chapters kind of being outlined and just hanging out. But I think once the documentary became a reality, um, with myself and our executive producer, Tara J. Frank, who's a phenomenal award-winning author, it really inspired me to finish. And I
Mm.
actually sent it to her. Um, as we were working on the getting started with the documentary, and she was like, "This is good." And so when she told me it was good, I said, "Okay, maybe I need to do this."
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Um, yeah, it feels so much like the stories in the documentary and in the book are, well, they're just kind of proof of concept of the what you call, I forget if you talk about this in the documentary, but in the book you call it strategic detachment.
Yes.
So, well, I guess my first question is how did you start making that kind of connection between the experience of Black women and Stoicism?
Yeah. So what I do as well for a day job is I do something called narrative intelligence. So my doctorate and all that work required a lot of coding. So looking at language and seeing um, how you could do like a sense making model, for instance. So what people are
Hmm.
saying, revealing how they're feeling or where there could be movement societally and all of these different things. And so what I was noticing was that the language was very similar to what I would read like in ancient philosophy.
Hmm.
Um, it was very um, almost sounded like Marcus Aurelius when I would listen to certain Black women speak about strategic detachment, even if they weren't using that particular word.
Sure.
Essentially, just being able to um, detach from what's happening around you, detach from what's being said about you,
Hmm.
detach from the box that you're supposed to be placed in, really, and going inside and figuring out, no, 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 this is who I am. This is how I want to ultimately live my life. And so those overlaps were really strong. I mean, I was literally seeing like quotes that I don't think folks were using as quotes from ancient Roman emperors, but there were those dovetails, and I said, "Oh wow, this is like almost a stoic type of movement, um,
Hmm.
and in a different way of looking at resilience."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so so no group, acts as a monolith. But
Right.
how are you seeing Black women use these kinds of principles and kind of this kind of innate, oh, this we I have to in this environment, how I have operated in the past has not served me or anyone well, and so I need to do something different. How are you seeing that play out? Um,
And I think that's a great question because that's exactly what our documentary looks at. Because you're right, we're not all a monolith. And so, but the one thing that I can say is monolithic, and I'll go on record as saying this, and if someone wants to raise their hand and say
Ooh,
I'm the one, that
pull quote.
I'll concede. But I have not met a Black woman yet who has said that she did not feel extremely exhausted, extremely burned out, that she has not felt as if she has to work harder. than her peers to be able to get any type of recognition or to make it along in the world, or that the expectations of her have felt fair. And so, coming from that standpoint, women do all kinds of different things, right? So in the documentary, two of the women decided to leave the United States. One who Dr. Tana moved to Rwanda. The other, Crystal, moved to Mexico, right? So just saying, I need to do something completely different, and dealing with some of that institutional betrayal that came out of the election, and how that hit folks, right? So regardless of where you stood on the political aisle, some of the things that were said about Kamala Harris, right? And I wasn't a big fan of her politics, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't a rip-roaring fan, and I know lots of women that were not. The way that she was treated, though, was
Mhm.
very, and the things that were said about her that were very racially coded, that called
Mhm.
into question, just her basic abilities and humanity, was struck a chord, because it was like watching that placed on almost like an avatar, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, so the response was such that no matter what I do, I could even be the vice president of the United States, and I'm still not going to get treated like a basic, common human being.
Right,
And that
right.
hit hard, I think, in our collective consciousness.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just yeah, the the CV, the qualifications over here with Kamala compared to the qualification to the negative, the list of negatives and the unqualifiedness on the other side, um, must have, yeah, struck a chord of, wow, yeah, this is how I have been treated time and time and time again. And so, yeah, just the recognition
Mhm.
of that. So I can see how people might have had enough after watching that play out.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so I'm always one to say, well, so uh, this this season of Yellfire has been almost exclusively, I think there's next episode there will be a white dude involved, but it's almost been exclusively conversations with black women. And I don't take those conversations for granted. And the willingness to be available to some random white dude to ask questions. And so I
well,
very
that's what
much,
it's all about, you know.
well, it is, but I also recognize how when some people say no, and that's fine
Mhm.
because I don't have to spend my energy explaining shit to you,
Yeah.
Craig.
Yeah,
And
some people don't have the energy left. I mean, there's a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
women I know that are in the same place of, I don't have the energy, I'm too tired, I don't want to keep explaining.
yeah.
Yeah.
So all that said, appreciate your time and your sharing all of this. So, I kind of brought, kind of widening out from that. So, with kind of this strategic detachment, I don't know if this is the right way to think about it, but it's kind of like black women are leaving the rest of us to figure it out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but do you have any advice as you all leave us, as you all
Yeah.
before you just completely strategically detach? Do you have any
Yeah.
advice?
I think too, there's all different, there's a lot of Black women still doing a whole lot of organizing, that are still, out there, on the front lines. I'd say it's
Hmm.
far less. But I do believe that the biggest advice is that sometimes, in order to organize and in order to be whole, you have to step back,
Hmm.
right? So essentially, what's happened, as and I think I mentioned this. I'm a ninth generation American. So that's a long
Okay.
time being in this country.
Yeah.
Okay. My family's fought in every single war. There's been a family member that's fought in every war.
Hmm.
They founded institutions that if I went down the list, it would take me all day.
Yeah.
And they've had to fight nonstop, right? So it's not just me, it's been
Yeah.
nonstop fighting for civil rights since the very beginning. And I had uncles that were hung for operating the Underground Railroad.
Oh, wow.
And then
Yeah.
I've had, all the way up until, today with some persecution acts that have taken place in my family because they're outspoken and because they're standing for what's right. So I
Hmm.
do think that it's not just about you stepping back, right? Because that sounds like almost kind of self-absorbed. Really what it
Yeah.
is like it's it's almost allowing yourself to do something that no one in any generation has ever been able to do before. I,
Okay.
my mom is a Pulitzer Prize winning researcher.
Hmm. Wow.
And so she has had books um, literally that are stacked to the ceiling. I mean, books signed by, you know, uh, the Obamas and books coming in that are first edition, and she's a book kind of connoisseur. I've never seen her read
Huh.
in my life. I've never seen her read. I know she reads, but
Yeah.
I've never seen her read because,
Huh.
again, that sitting down and resting is
Hmm.
not part of our makeup. It's not part of our social role, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And so you think about then her mother, coming from what I call the hells of Mississippi in the South to New York
Hmm.
City,
Hmm. Hmm.
where there were horrors that I won't even get into that my family endured in that hellhole.
Yeah.
And so escaping as a refugee to come up north. And then you think about her mother who died working in a cotton field, right?
Yeah.
Worked herself to death. And then I go back and then you see work to death, work to death, work to
Hmm.
death,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? When
Yeah.
does it ever end? And
Yeah.
then you realize nothing's changed.
Hmm.
Hardly nothing's changed. Civil rights are being pulled back.
Hmm.
Nothing's
Hmm.
changed.
Yeah.
A million Black women close to it losing their jobs just for existing.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. The little bit that we've been able to scrape together as a community for our businesses, being sued into oblivion, nothing's changed. It's the
Wow.
same exact thing. So if
Yeah.
I know that, and I know that all of the hordes of women before me have worked themselves to death and tried to get free and it did not work, why am I going to say, let me sign up to be America's sacrificial lamb when the country has given me hatred and has told me basically I'm not worth anything other than
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
mule.
Yeah.
And so you have a choice. And I think that some Black women, and I think it's a sizable number, have decided, maybe I don't want to die for this because it doesn't help anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in conversations that I have in my small circle, um, the black women, many of the black women in the, well, and one of the people featured in the documentary, Lisa Hurley,
Love her.
the theme of radical rest
Yes.
is keeps coming up,
Yes.
and yeah, so like take like yeah, not working yourself to death and
Yeah.
overperforming for systems that do not value
Yes.
you.
Oh,
And
Lisa's
yeah,
written a whole book on this that I want to make
yeah.
sure that we mention called Space to Exhale, that really talks about that and kind of how to do this. And in the documentary, we talk about like women literally don't know how to do this. In my
Hmm.
group, what we
Hmm.
do, I run a small group for professional Black women, and we'll do like somatic practice and get together.
Hmm.
And the breakthroughs that happen from breathing exercises,
Wow.
it's like almost, it's just, I always tell them to prepare themselves because you might not even expect that you have these types of reactions and sobbing and,
Yeah.
release, right?
Wow.
And so these are all things that have to be for many of us, not all, I'm sure, but for many of us has to be learned.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. So you're up to a lot of stuff. Is there anything I missed? Anything else you want to share? Oh, so the what are kind of next steps? What do you imagine happening with the book, the Stoic era?
Yeah, so I'm hoping that that can come out in August. It's been a long time coming. And I'm hoping to, do a decent release, but I really want to couple it with the documentary. Um,
Yeah.
uh, we have three authors in this documentary that are
Oh,
featured. And
nice.
so we're thinking about how do we dovetail? And as always, how do we come together? Uh, the group is very collaborative. We don't compete. We link to each other's work all the time. So thinking about
Hmm.
really innovative ways to do this, because like you mentioned, so many Black women have been contributing to this literature.
Yeah.
Some of the things that you mentioned, even like Trisha Hersey was talking about rest as, I believe, revolution, right?
Mm. Hmm.
Years ago. And so it's kind of figuring out where that place is for the Stoic era, which I
Hmm.
think fits into extreme nerd category. And so it's like very nerdy. And I think that a lot of Black women who identify with that level of nerdiness might appreciate it. And then for some of the more, I would say, practical and very deep epiphany generating read, Space to Exhale is a good one. And
Hmm.
then You Are Before the World by Tara J. Frank. So if I looked at those scopes of
Yeah.
literature, I would
Love
say
it.
Stoic era fits someplace else, but along that continuum.
Okay. Well, that's yeah. Well, um, I mean, I had the pleasure of taking a look at the manuscript, and it's a compelling to me. I mean, I guess I'm a nerd because it was a super compelling read for me. The stories that you weave in, the people that you feature, yeah, and yeah, the connections to this ancient, Stoic philosophy that resonate today. I was I told you this. I was jealous of the writing. It's super well written, and can't wait for
Thank
it to get
you.
out there. I love the idea of yeah, kind of connecting it with these other books
Yeah. And if I
and
can add, Craig, I think one of the things that's really interesting is, in getting comments from folks who just did very brief pre-reads, it's like, well, why did you pick, Rome, Greece, you know? And my response to that is for one reason is that we're talking about this from a Western lens, right? We're looking at this from a very Western standpoint, right? But the
hmm
other
hmm
element of it, when we're talking about Stoicism, is that when we think of these places, we often think of them in the way that we've been kind of brainwashed into thinking about them. These were highly integrated societies, full of, African thought and African leadership and African generals. They didn't have the same type of mindset that we have today around what counts as philosophically sound and riveting. It was just a completely different way of thinking about things. And so when I was thinking about how to do this, I wanted to make sure to honor that. I almost wish that that was the same today.
yeah,
I wish it
yeah,
was, there's some things we've learned since those times, but there's some things that we need to unlearn as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up because yeah, it was more of a free flow of commerce and ideas and people and yeah,
Yeah.
when
One of
we
my
think of
favorite
it,
stories
oh
that I
god.
shared was of I was watching a documentary. I was watching a documentary where I think it was BBC, and they went to an area of Italy, Pompeii, I believe it was Pompeii. And, the bodies, there was this huge eruption, and
Mhm.
the bodies are forever um, kind of calcified in time, right? So as
Yeah.
they're walking through, this white woman and a white gentleman who was the anthropologist and excavator, they came across these bodies, and the gentleman is explaining, these are Africans, right? And he's
Mhm.
saying how wealthy they must have been. He's looking at all the jewels
Wow.
and she's like, completely confused. And she says, "So were they slaves?" And he says, "No, I don't think that they were slaves. Look at what they are wearing. I mean,
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
probably noble people, right?"
Right.
She could not get her mind around that. And she asked again, like Africans. And he said, like, what kind of, like, you mean Northern Africans? She said, no, like black, like sub-Saharan, like black people, like Africans.
Wow.
Okay. They
Wow.
lived here. Okay. That kind of mindset is
Yeah.
precisely the issues that I talk about in this book, because you
Yeah.
can't even let the dead have their nobility
Yeah.
unless they
Wow.
fit within a certain social role and paradigm that the ancients didn't even believe in. It's almost like, let's
Right.
not take our racism and place this upon them.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a yeah. 15 this what we're the soup we're the stuff we're swimming in, yeah, is very recent compared to that starting in the 1400s and on
Yeah.
on forward. But yeah, wow. Um yeah. Yeah, every day I hear stories of white people missing the point, and not understanding what should be, you know.
And they're part of the system too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and I and I think that that's important, because I know plenty of, as white people in my family that have gotten it for many, many years, and they're not and this kind of belief that we all have these type of predispositions is not true. I know plenty of people that really don't. Like for them, it's really isn't a factor. We all have biases, but we don't
Hmm.
all have that bias, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
we all have different biases, but I do think, um, there is an actual path forward where if you do get enough like minds, regardless of, race or creed or whatever,
Hmm.
we've seen it. There are places where people can live and work side by side. One of the places I'm obsessed with right now is Martha's Vineyard and that history and
Oh,
why
okay.
that was
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
different. I mean,
Huh.
I cannot stop reading about it. Um,
Oh, man.
Fascinating
Yeah,
with,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm sure it wasn't perfect. I'm sure there were some things that went on, but having white and black and native working in
Okay.
tandem, it
Oh,
was
man.
possible. It was possible. Think how far along we would have gotten if that was the basis.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, I gotta look into that.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh, it's
That-
so fascinating. So one of the big things, and I'll let you go, one of the big things that I couldn't believe this was that some of the, I believe it was I think it was largely the European population that came to Martha's Vineyard. There was a hereditary issue with their hearing. And so I
Huh.
think it was one out of every three was deaf. And
Huh.
so the entire island had to learn sign language
Okay.
to
Wow.
get around. So you think about that though, the level of intradependence that happens there already, like off the
Huh.
break.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder if that had something to do with it.
Huh.
Also, the just the whaling industry and what that requires of people to kind of survive on that type of an island in that terrain,
Okay.
needing to navigate with one another. And a lot of this is
Hmm.
about seeing that you need the other, that you
Yes.
need
Yes,
one
yes, yes.
another.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Awesome. Wow. Great, great discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're
having me.
fascinating person. And yeah, I love these projects that you're working on. Um, we didn't even get to the screenplay you're noodling around with, but
Oh my gosh.
that's
Yeah,
another
well,
story, I
yeah,
guess.
we'll keep that one under wraps.
All right, maybe I'll edit that out. But
No, that's good. We could keep it in.
all right. Thanks, Jade Singleton. Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time. Great to talk to you. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation with Dr. Jade Singleton. Sorry about the production value and the transition there. That was pretty janky. Janky. So sorry about that. You know where you won't find, you'll find amazing production value is in the 92 documentary. So there'll be information in the show notes about that. So take a look at that. And thanks again, Dr. Singleton. Please like and subscribe and all of that. And thanks again for being here for this episode of Yell Fire.